For any casual football fan, it would be easy to look at the Jaguars' playoff comeback from 27 points down and attribute all of it to dumb luck, or Trevor Lawrence being an elite young quarterback, or Doug Peterson being the Super Bowl caliber coach that he is, or just the Chargers being the Chargers. And to a degree, I mean, yeah, all of that is true, but you know what this channel is by now? That is not enough for us. We need the real answer. The answer that you can only get from mainlining coffee for 3 straight days while charting every single play on film just to get this video out before Saturday. And that's exactly what we just did, by the way. Unfortunately, these under-eye bags do not make themselves, folks. And there's 2 parts of this episode that you need to be aware of. The first part you need to understand so that you can then get the second part. That's narrative structure for you. Part 1 is going to be on what the Chargers defense did well in the first half and why they were able to frustrate Trevor Lawrence and why the Jags struggled and fell behind 27-0 in the first place. And part 2 is on the adjustments that the Jaguars made towards the end of the second quarter, but again, mostly in the second half, that then allowed them to come roaring back and completely flip the game on its head. So with all that being said, I do not want to waste any more of your time. Let's get to this film. When charting both the Chargers defense and the Jaguars offense on my rewatch of this game, oddly enough, there wasn't actually anything that out of the ordinary for either team in terms of tendencies. The Chargers did not play a lot of man coverage, which they normally don't anyway, and in both the first half and the second half, they stuck mostly to their tried and true zone looks, like a little bit of cover 2, a lot of cover 3, and then sprinkling in some quarters and quarter half coverages, which most people just call cover 6 or cover 8, depending on how it's played and whether you're a Vic Fangio disciple, which of course Brandon Staley is. But anyway, that's besides the point, and we're going to get to all of that a little bit later. What matters for now is that LA did not do anything in this game that they don't do against everyone else. They just happen to be doing it at a much higher level execution-wise than they usually do. Or to put it even more bluntly, Asante Samuel was playing out of his damn mind and almost single-handedly willed his team to an early lead against the entire Jags offense. Samuel had 3 picks in this game, and 2 of them were because of his combination of ball skills and physicality to just fight through contact deep down the field and make the catch while out in quarters, though you could argue that he should have been flagged for holding for one of them, but we'll just conveniently ignore that. But it was the other interception that he had, which chronologically on the night was his second one. That pick really showed off the other aspect of Samuel's game that makes him so damn good: his instincts. The Chargers are showing pressure here on 3rd and 5, but then back out of it to play cover 2, so Samuel, of course, is responsible for the flat zone on his side, and the Jags, meanwhile, have a mesh call on here, which isn't necessarily great against cover 2, but it's still workable on 3rd down if you just want to run these underneath hook defenders off the sticks to create space for a catch and run. Now, what Samuel does here that I just love from a football IQ standpoint is that he doesn't actually play the flat. On paper, yes, he is the flat defender, but with no immediate threat to the flat because he's lined up pre-snap away from the running back, he constrains himself further inside, almost like an extra hook defender, and while he's doing that, he's getting vision on the rest of the receivers so that he can scan for a late crosser coming his way. Once he passes off the number 1 on his side to the safety, he's already looking at Evan Ingram and just waiting for him to get to the hook area. And Lawrence was so busy looking off the actual hook zone defenders to get them to bite on the OTB route over the middle that he had no idea that Samuel was playing Ingram so aggressively. You can even see on the end zone view of this play that Lawrence didn't even glance that direction before he threw this ball. He had zero expectation that any defender would be hanging that far inside. And so as a result, it was picked off by Asante, and that set up yet another Chargers touchdown in the first quarter. These types of plays happened over and over and over again in the first half. The Chargers secondary as a whole, and especially Samuel, were playing ultra aggressive zone coverage, and with all the cover 3 that they were playing where the DBs were lined up with outside leverage, they were going out of their way to funnel the offense to the inside and to force Trevor Lawrence to throw contested balls to the middle of the field. It just felt like there was no space anywhere to be found, and the secondary was taking all the air out of the offense, schematically speaking. No receivers had any room to breathe at all, and Lawrence was forced, at least for a time, to only work things like curl routes against the one-on-one matchups outside, or flare screens with his running backs just to try to move the ball. It was really masterful work by Brandon Staley's defense, truth be told, And I do think they deserve credit for having tremendous execution of these different coverages. Obviously, they did not hold up for the entire game, but I just want to point out that the original game plan, at least at the beginning of the night, was working very, very well. Now, you are probably wondering at this point, what possible adjustment could the Jaguars have made to turn all of these coverages upside down? Because it's not like the Chargers were calling their defense that much differently in the second half compared to the first half. They were still mostly calling the same stuff. They weren't calling prevent, they weren't blitzing out of control and leaving huge open spaces for, Trevor to work with hot routes or screens. None of that was happening. So what changed? What adjustment was made to allow that comeback? And believe it or not, it came down to formation. That was about it. Just one slight change in how Jacksonville was lining up pre-snap is what allowed them to completely break the rules of this Chargers defense and punish them for what they did best. And I will explain all of that and what exactly that means in just a moment. But first things first, if you are in Duval or really anywhere around Duval and you're planning on going to the divisional round game up in KC, or dare I say it, the AFC Championship game, or just tickets for next season, or concerts, or events, really anything, SeatGeek has you covered. And by the way, I'm looking at the concert calendar for Jacksonville right now on my second monitor. Did you know that Third Eye Blind is coming in March? Look, I pay very close attention to my analytics, okay? I know my audience very well. And it's not a very young audience. It's like less than 2% under 18 or some shit like that. We're all really old. We're all millennials. And so I know you guys fuck with Third Eye Blind. I know you love them in the late 90s just like I did because god damn it, they were so good. Banger after bang. Jumper, how's it gonna be? Fucking Semi-Charmed Life. Look, I know there is nothing you would rather do in March than, get drunk with your buddies now that we have disposable income. We're old now. We got money. You go out, you belt Semi-Charmed Life for a night, you relive the glory days, you go home and you have a great evening. Tickets are like $70. You want $20 off? Fine. Promo code Brett, SeatGeek. You get the discount on that or whatever else you want to spend it on. I know you can pretend it's going to be on Jags tickets. You can't fucking lie to me. I know it's Third Eye Blind, okay? I understand you because I am you, okay? You're going to that fucking show. Anyway. Promo code Brett, SeatGeek, $20 off. What were we talking about? Oh, formations. Yeah, we have a second half of the episode to do. So let's talk about why Doug Peterson is really, really good at his job. Looking at how the Jaguars offense was lining up in the second half, relative to the first half when things went horrifically bad, there was a huge uptick in 3-by-1 formations as the game went on, meaning 3 receivers on one side, 1 receiver on the other, and the running back lined up in the backfield on the weak side. This is commonly known, of course, as trips. The number one goal of Doug Peterson for the second half, in my opinion, was to try and force the Chargers out of all the cover 3 looks that they were using early in the game to funnel the ball inside. Jacksonville wanted and needed to open up space, especially vertical space, and to do it, they resorted to trips looks to scare the Chargers out of that cover 3 comfort zone. We'll kind of work backwards on this and show the results first, and then I'll describe the process that got us there. But this touchdown late in the third quarter to Zay Jones, to me, was the culmination of everything in this game. Jacksonville busted the Chargers defense wide open and used their own rules in cover 8 against them to get this huge score, which made it 20-30 and brought them within striking distance with about 15 minutes left to play. So again, looking at the wide angle, how exactly did we get to this point? Looking at this receiver running wide open, why is there no post safety in the middle to stop this throw? Why were the Chargers not in cover 3 against trips? I mean, there are several adjustments that you can use to play cover 3 against those looks. It's not like they don't exist. They have their problems, but you can play it, and we even saw the Chargers use cover 3 against trips before in this same game. So why were they not calling it now? Well, to me, speaking from all my experience when I've asked different coaches about this same dilemma in the past, Brandon Staley was reluctant to stick with cover 3 because many of the most popular versions of cover 3 against 3-by-1 formations, like Nick Saban's 3-Buzz Mabel for instance, are super risky to run too many times in any one game. It functions, yes, but as a DC, you're kind of praying to God that you don't give up a touchdown every time you call it against certain looks. How a hypothetical 3-buzz Mabel call would work against this specific formation from Jacksonville is you bail the field side corner deep to play top down on any go routes on his side, and then the nickel will buzz out to play underneath him and take away any comeback routes underneath that corner. So it's kind of like a vertical bracket on that area of the field. In order to cover the number 2 receiver then, which the nickel is getting off of, the strong safety will come down and play the strong hook zone and carry any vertical route from that number 2. The weak side safety will then rotate while that strong safety drops down, and he will play the deep middle zone that you normally associate with cover 3. And meanwhile, backside, the corner over here will be isolated in man coverage on this single threat, and the will linebacker will be matched on the running back. That is mostly how 3-buzz Mabel works, and all of this looks good so far, except the only guy left on the field to now match the number 3 receiver if they go vertical is the Mike linebacker. This is what's called the 3-up is 3 player in Saban language, and it's probably the last thing that any linebacker not named Fred Warner wants to do, because you're always at risk of giving up a long touchdown with that matchup. It is extremely vulnerable, so in order to avoid the potential liability of having a linebacker trying to run with the team's number 1 receiver deep down the field, the Chargers do not want to call 3-buzz Mabel too often, or really most versions of cover 3 too often, and instead they'll typically play trips looks with either quarters coverage and all of the adjustments therein, like stubby or stump, or they'll call quarter half, or even half quarter, which they refer to again as cover 8. And in addition to that, especially in cover 8, there will usually be a tricks call attached to that to allow the backside safety to be the one to pick up the vertical of the number 3 receiver, not the Mike linebacker doing it. So overall, you have a half field safety to the passing strength, so the deep boundary area is once again protected from go balls, which Trevor Lawrence is more than capable of throwing from the far hash. You have the flat defender underneath, the nickel is playing a skiff technique, which stands for seam curl flat, and the Mike is just going to be chilling in his hook zone underneath. All of that is great and works on paper better against trips, for the most part, than cover 3 would. Except for one last thing. If the offensive coordinator expects you to be in cover 8 and he sees it coming, he will probably ruin your life. And Doug Peterson, unfortunately for the Chargers, knew that they were going to be in cover 8. Here is the problem with this coverage. Yes, you do have the weak side safety nailing down on the vertical of number 3 so the linebacker does not have to carry it, but Peterson wanted this safety to nail down on the number 3. He wanted him out of the way and that space created because by the very nature of cover 8, when you have a half-field safety that has already expanded to play the deep boundary area in case there's a go route, and when you have a nickel that is letting the vertical from the number 2 receiver on that side go because in a skiff technique, he has to break on the dig route that's coming underneath, there's nobody left on that number 2. They quite literally overloaded the coverage and made them break their own rules because there are too many verticals for the safeties to handle. And when I've talked to defensive coaches in the past, this is exactly why some of them hate calling cover 8 into trips, because it's really easy to force it into busting if you know it's coming. If you wonder why all the old school Saban defenses at Bama, before they really started recruiting for speed at linebacker and they focused more on the big old meat grinders in the middle like Dante Hightower, if you want to know why they just ran quarters all day against trips and didn't bother as much with cover 3 or cover 8 in that era, this is why. Quarters is the only thing that consistently worked because everybody was matched up, everybody was essentially man-to-man, and nobody was just let free deep down the field. And for those of you following along at home, by the way, I'm sure some of you are now thinking, wait a minute, back up. How did Peterson know they were going to be in cover 8 and not something like quarters that can cover these verticals more reliably? How did he guess their coverage? And to me, this is just a theory, mind you, you have to again point to how the Jags were lined up and who was actually on the field for the Chargers. There is one number for LA that you do not see out there right now, and that is 43. Michael Davis. You may never have heard of him before, but I promise you he is really important. Davis's role as a big, tough, physical corner against trip sets, regardless of the coverage call, whether it's cover 3, quarters, cover 8, cover 6, whatever, he's going to be manned up on that isolated receiver backside. That is what he does, and he is damn good at it. However, only about 4 minutes of game clock before that Zay Jones touchdown, he got hurt and left the game. Ironically, his last coverage snap of the evening was on the Jags' second touchdown, where Asante Samuel bit on a double move trying to get his fourth INT of the game, and he gave up a score as a result. That moment was the last time we saw Davis in coverage on the other side of the field, and with him out, that necessitated the move of Samuel to playing that backside man-to-man role in most of their coverages. So all of that being said, on that long touchdown that we just broke down, Samuel is the one that's covering Evan Ingram's little speed out backside, while Ja'Sir Taylor, a rookie 6th round pick, he is now the outside corner to the field side, which is the role that Asante Samuel used to play. This is the same Ja'Sir Taylor that literally one game earlier gave up a massive go route down the sideline to the Broncos when he was left out on an island. So I can kind of understand why now that the Chargers might have wanted to protect him from a go route by playing a half-field safety over the top. I can honestly understand it, and you know what? I probably would have called the same thing too. But believe you me, Doug Peterson saw this coming a mile away. If Brandon Staley could not play cover 3 against trips because he was a little bit worried about his linebackers, but he also couldn't play quarters because he was worried about a rookie corner being one-on-one outside, well, there's only so many other things that you can play, and cover 8 was the most likely option. Throughout the entire second half, Peterson dialed up trips look after trips look after trips look, and he dared the Chargers to stop it with whatever coverage they wanted to throw at it, and they couldn't. In fact, just looking at the raw numbers, Lawrence went 18 of 28 for 204 yards, a 7.3 YPA, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick, and a 110.7 passer rating from trip sets, while in a balanced, a little bit more constrained 2x2 receiver distribution with 2 receivers to each side, he was only 6 of 15 for 48 yards, 3.2 YPA, no touchdowns, 2 picks, and a passer rating of, I kid you not, 9.2. Formation was everything in this game, and Peterson knew that they could not move the ball out of 2x2 looks because they were just getting massacred over the middle by cover 3, so he leaned as heavily as he possibly could into 3x1, and it saved the Jaguars' season. Were they helped out by a very untimely injury to Michael Davis that influenced which coverages Staley could call even more? Obviously, yes, but to me, this comeback was more about the Jaguars winning it with formations and adjustments than it was about the Chargers losing it with injuries and busted coverages. Those game-winning adjustments by Doug Peterson when they absolutely needed them the most are the real story of this game. Alright, that will almost do it for this week's show, but before I leave, I have something really important that I want to bring to all of your attention, so I hope that you bear with me for just a minute or two. I get a lot of DMs and emails every single week asking, where I learn about football, where I get the knowledge from, how I learn to teach it, and everything like that. And for me, at least, I know for a lot of other people in football media, coaching clinics is by far the biggest resource that I have, in order to grow and develop and learn new things about the sport. And I am still learning every single day, and I always have and I always will. And so coaching clinics are a very key thing for me. And coming up, there's an extremely important clinic that I recommend all of you get that also happens to be benefiting one of the most brilliant coaches I've ever interacted with in my entire life. Sorry for misspeaking, but Adam Gaylor is just an incredible talent, incredibly smart, so easy to learn from. And this clinic is called Crushing Cancer, and it's benefiting, Adam and his family. His wife, Kinsey, was just diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of breast cancer. And so the whole coaching community has come together to put on a clinic to benefit the Gaylor family while they're trying to pay for, all of the expenses that come with fighting cancer. And I'm sure many of you watching this have experienced that. And so what comes along with that. And so this clinic is extremely important. It features presentations from Glenn Schumann and Todd Monken, who both just won the Natty in Georgia as their offensive and defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter from Michigan, Josh Henson from USC, Jim Knowles from OSU, Ron Roberts from Auburn, Kyle Kogan is presenting, Coach Vass, Brian Vaughn, Dub Maddox, Brian Ellis. I mean, the list goes on, and I'm reading it right now. It's insane, just an incredible collection of coaches and a vault of knowledge. The proceeds from this clinic, as I mentioned, will benefit the Gaylor family. You can get a full year of replay at $39 or a lifetime of replay at $59. And the whole coaching community has come together to help Coach Gaylor's family. I hope that you will also consider supporting them and also learning more about football than I could ever teach you by getting access to these clinics. So hopefully it helps you, it helps them. Coaches get to share their knowledge. It's from January 30th until February 2nd is when the clinic takes place. But again, you can purchase lifetime replay, so you can go back and learn at your own pace forever. So it's an incredible cause. I hope you guys support it. I don't know if I said it already. If you go to Gaylor.coachesclinic.com, that is where you can find it. That is where you can sign up and everything like that. Again, thank you all for watching this late in the video. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for supporting Coach Gaylor. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring this episode. And yeah, I'll be back next week with something probably entirely different. Until then, later.